It's time!
Kicking everybody. We are back for another episode of Picking Fights. I'm Keith. Up above is my friend Tom. Tom, how are you today, man?
Doing good. Happy Sunday to you, my friend. It is the Sunday before the 4th of July. We got probably one of the most anticipated UFC cards of the year in front of us. Excited to talk about it. You texted me yesterday telling me how excited you were to talk about it today. Man, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Really excited to talk about this one. It's really interesting to watch like the hype around this card because I think really up until the Brian Ortega fight, Volkanovski, while he was champ, he wasn't like this international star that he is now. And I just think the past couple of wins that he's put together, and the Islam Makhachev fight, while that wasn't a win on paper, that was still a huge win because it grew his audience and really just showed his toughness and his ability to game plan guys, and his marketability as a star in the UFC. So it's fun to watch him grow, in the eyes of the fans. Like, he's starting to become a household name. I have friends at work that don't really watch the UFC at all, just sit down for maybe like some of the big cards, and they are hyped for this Volkanovski fight this weekend. And it's a great card too. I mean, if you have a guy like Volk with the star power, you have to build a card around him and draw the most amount of eyes possible, maximize that pay-per-view dollar. And I think they've done a great job of that. Super pumped to talk about it. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly spot on, in talking about Volkanovski entering that era of UFC fighters who are kind of household names to people who don't particularly watch, but will tune in for a fight if this guy is fighting. Conor McGregor obviously is a part of that. Izzy is a part of that. People, who are just casuals or don't even really pay attention. No, Israel Adesanya probably. Who else is a part of that? John Jones, 100% part of that. Yeah. Probably the biggest star, a part of that right now.
Francis a little bit. Francis was like that for a little bit.
Yeah,
there.
Francis was definitely there or just approaching there.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Daniel Cormier, maybe at times people knew of him, but I think Volkanovski, especially with a win here, going up with that going up, having that fight at 155. Having the performance that he did when many people thought that he won. I remember you still maybe do think that he won that fight. But having that performance, I think it's possible for him to take a loss, but also, treat that as a win, like you were saying. And I think he has a bigger following because of it. And, now if he can go back down and prove his dominance at 145 pounds, I mean, it just kind of solidifies his mystique and where he is in terms of like Hall of Fame contention. And then he can go back up and potentially challenge again for that 155 pound belt, because I mean, we saw him fight the champion and we saw how close it was. To the fact that the fight was even debatable, I think is a testament to Volk. So really interesting to see. And then there's the whole, rehydrating thing that creates an interesting storyline as well.
Yeah, I don't buy into that as much. I just think, the eye test, right? Like, that's what the judges go by. I still believe that Volk won that fight. But still another huge test for him this week because Yair Rodriguez has proven to be a world beater. Right. The performance he's put up against guys like Josh Emmett and the Korean Zombie throughout the years, working his way up through the UFC. And, Mexican fighters are also on the rise right now. Maybe not, who was that? Irene Aldana, who just fought Amanda Nunes. Maybe not her.
Right.
But, Yair Rodriguez, he's got that air about him. And, he's another Mexican, technically a champ right now in the featherweight division. Can he unify the belts? We'll find out, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But for the meantime, please, if you're watching this, like, comment, subscribe. That would be really nice. Definitely leave a comment, like if you're with us in the chat or after the fact. We like to, interact with your comments and see what you're saying. Also, you can follow us on Twitter. My @ is @PickinKeith. Tom is @PickinFightsTom. And then the team is @_PickinWinners. That's where you can get everything else, as well as over on Instagram. So, and then, we had some good fights last night too, Tom. We had Sean Strickland proving that there's a little bit of power behind his punches. That was actually a great performance from him against a guy who we come to find out is really just a can crusher.
Sure.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I had said going into that fight that Sean Strickland was working with Alex Pereira, and watching a couple of videos or vlogs that those guys were making together. I was interested to see what differences we would see with Sean Strickland, and I thought maybe we would see him, have a little bit more finishing ability going out there against Abus Magomedov, and that's exactly what he did. He went out there and he finished him in the second round after getting brutally eye poked in the first, and I think that's a second guy now that's went trained with Alex Pereira, and we see substantial increases in their stand up. The first guy being Wellington Turman, who we like to beat up on a lot whenever we see him fighting. But I think he's on a 2-fight win streak now and has shown much more advancements in his clinch game and his stand-up and striking. So I think there's something to be said about Alex Pereira for sure, and his training ability and his ability to teach. And then obviously, maybe it's a little bit of that rub, you know what I mean, where people go and you just spend time with a guy who's really good at something, and almost by osmosis, you just develop some talent gain.
The rub is definitely a real thing, right? Like you hear a lot of guys talk about it, or Teddy Atlas has his famous quote. I believe it comes from him, where it's like when a guy becomes champion, he becomes 30% better overnight because you just fought and beat a champion. And there is a certain level of like talent that just sort of naturally flows. It looks like, like you look at guys like Leon Edwards, they just instantly become better. And so yeah, I think you're right about that. But I think a lot of credit should go to Glover Teixeira, because he was training with Pereira, but I believe they were training at Glover's gym, right? And Glover was brought here in like the late 90s, 2000s, or came to America and was discovered, I guess, by Chuck Liddell and Tim Kennedy and all those guys training out in California, I believe, back in the day, early days of the UFC. And Glover Teixeira was like this boogeyman because he was just a training partner for these guys. He couldn't get cleared to fight in the United States or in the UFC. So for years and years, he was just training and coaching like a dog. So I think a lot of credit does go to Glover. I think that's where Alex's little bit of grappling that we've seen, where that ability comes in. And I'm excited to see what Glover does. I hope he takes on a bigger role and develops a team out there in Connecticut. We could see some fun stuff happen with him, and I think he would be a great coach.
Well, and Glover in terms of the ground game, and if that's translating now also too, and that's what we're seeing is Pereira. I mean, that could be really a really, strong gym combination. And you add, for whatever reason, Sean Strickland there, add a degree of craziness to all of that, and a need to have a really high motor and gas tank. I mean, that would be, you get fighters coming out of there who have a crazy mindset, great left hands, good ground game, and insane stamina. I mean, that would be a really interesting gym combination in terms of personalities and skill combinations, because it seems like they would have everything to build a really strong UFC fighter, no?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it goes back to those days when Glover was training with the Chuck Liddells of the world, where it's like, you have this really strong gym where some of the top guys in one particular weight class too, or two weight classes very close to each other are coming together, and, iron sharpens iron, all that good stuff. So looking forward to seeing what comes out of there. Another fight we got to talk about from last night too is Damir Ismagulov versus Grant Dawson. We were both on Damir last week, winning a strong decision because he's got grappling prowess and he's got really good striking. And then here comes Grant Dawson, just locking his hooks in everywhere, controlling Damir all over the ground and taking his back for a good chunk of the fight. Mm-hmm. What a wild upset for Grant Dawson, kind of proving he belongs in that top 15. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great showing by Grant Dawson, something that, we didn't necessarily see coming. We thought Damir Ismagulov would have a great ground game, and that had been tried and tested, tried and tested against, established guys in the past, Gamrot, Sarukian. So, right. So, I think he'd been through the ringer and came out, looking really good. So for him to go and get controlled by Grant Dawson there, I don't know if that's maybe a poor showing by Damir Ismagulov. If it's a great showing by Grant Dawson, is it both? But yeah, definitely a great showing for Grant Dawson. And as far as Damir goes, it's going to be a ton of pressure on his next performance to show that this was a fluke. Because if he goes out there and has another poor performance, well, then those other two great performances get totally forgotten and be like, oh, remember what he could have been instead of what he is. So this next fight is going to mean, not his entire career, but certainly the trajectory of it for the foreseeable future. So a lot of pressure on Damir Ismagulov, but really great for Grant Dawson.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll definitely affect people's perception of him going forward because he is a really good fighter. But to get controlled the way that he did last night is pretty wild.
Whenever someone has a body triangle and has both of your arms pinned behind your head, you know what I mean? Almost just like, we call it big brothering you.
Yeah, you got big brother, or like you get bullied.
It's really hard for people to take you, really serious in the UFC when you've been big brother like that.
Yeah, that's a tough look. Speaking of dominating performances, we had Michael Morales against Max Griffin last night. I think Morales definitely proved he's legitimate. He's a very legitimate UFC fighter because Max Griffin is tough. He's a dog, and I have friends over from time to time, and I'll be like, "Hey, you want to play video games?" And eventually, the flow goes from like 2K to UFC. And I'm pretty good at UFC. If you want to play me online, drop your.
I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, drop your username in the comments, your gamer tag or whatever. But it reminded me of like, when you don't want to finish somebody in the fight, so you just keep letting them get back up, and then you throw another strong punch, and they get knocked down, or they have to, backpedal a little bit. That's what it was like for Michael Morales last night. Like it felt like he really could have finished that fight at any time. He was intelligent because he knew he was up. I think Max Griffin maybe took the first round in that fight, but the second round was so dominating and did so much damage to Max Griffin. The cardio was really not there for Max. And Michael Morales in that third round didn't want to take any big risks, but, and he did what he had to do to win, strong left jab, like really strong jab. He throws that like a missile. It's like off a piston. It's crazy. But no big risks, showed that he could grapple a little bit last night. And really just all around dominating performance, and definitely proved he's legitimate going forward in the UFC.
Yeah, what I was really impressed with him was the patience to be able to walk forward. And he was landing that jab. He was landing that right hand. He was throwing it like he was sitting down he was throwing that thing hard. And it was landing almost every single time he threw it on Max Griffin. I think there was a period of the time, I think in the second round, where he had thrown it for like 6 seconds straight. It was just bang, 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 and Max Griffin was taking him. He was eating him off the forearms, but you know that's going to accumulate. And obviously, it's going to be harder to throw that hand that you're accumulating those shots on. So even though they were, getting technically on the guard, I'm sure they were still doing some damage. And one thing I didn't necessarily love from him is it looked like at periods of time, even though he was maintaining center position in the ring, and he really had a strong ring generalship, and Max Payne was going around the outside of the octagon, it seemed like sometimes Morales would like take a deep breath and like reset. And, just from a stamina point of view or a cardio point of view, it's not like a great look. Now, I can't necessarily say it's a big negative because he had the stamina to go out there and finish the fight. It wasn't ever a period of time where he looked like he was really tired. But taking those big, deep breaths isn't necessarily a great sign. No, he is, I think, pretty young. And he has looked good. Yeah, and I think having that patience and that IQ is probably his biggest strength at this point. That right hand is great. He's really long and big for the division, so he's got that going for him as well. As long as he can maintain, the fight standings, that seems that's his strength right now. It's really interesting to see what Michael Brown is going to do.
Yeah, he did show really good takedown defense yesterday too. Like Max Griffin isn't like the best wrestler going or anything, but really good takedown defense. It proved he's super legitimate last night and super intelligent. You got anything else from last night you want to talk about, or? No,
I'm ready to jump into UFC 290. What about you?
Yeah. I do just want to mention coming down the pipe, Henry Cejudo, ICYMI, in case you missed it. Henry Cejudo is out against Chito Vera. Chito Vera now looking for an opponent, asked Petr Yan to fight. Petr Yan said no, he's taking a break till 2024. So, hoping for a fight for our boy Chito soon. I hope he gets something. And somebody who won't take it too last minute to where they can make that excuse that they took it at the last minute. But it would be nice to see Chito Vera get a win this year. Other than that, and two, before we jump into this, Jack Della Maddalena, we love him over here. Looks like he's no longer fighting on this card. If he does get a fight, I would say no matter what, bet Jack Della Maddalena. You want to talk about world beaters? Obviously if they put him in there against like somebody extreme, but I love Jack Della Maddalena. I hope he gets a fight this week. Was really looking forward to seeing him fight Sean Brady. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I like Sean Brady a lot. I'm disappointed in that. Hopefully he heals up and he can get back in there soon.
Yeah, I think
I'd love to see Jack Della Maddalena fight this weekend. Doesn't seem like it may happen, but even if it doesn't, hopefully he can get back in there soon. He's really exciting.
Yeah, we need a guy like Chris Curtis to take it last minute.
Yeah, every division seemingly like has one, you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But what do you say? UFC 290 prelim notables.
Let's do it.
All right. You want to go first?
Yeah. Real quick, I'll just talk about the Jimmy Crute Alonzo Menafield rematch. This is a wild fight that took place 4 months ago. What card was that? That was a big card. But yeah, these two guys kicked it off. That was or not kicked it off, but that was the Makhachev versus Volkanovski fight. Card. Anyways, Alonzo Menafield, Jimmy Crute, they go out there 3 rounds, balls to the wall pretty much from the jump. And we had a majority draw as the decision, as the verdict in that fight. No man winning, but both of them decided to come back. I believe they spoke about it in the octagon after that fight. But it was exciting. You know, both these guys are throwing. Alonzo Menafield clearly had the striking advantage, and Jimmy Crute clearly had the grappling advantage through a lot of the fight. And I was pretty much split between the time on the feet and the time grappling. Neither of these men are very intelligent. There were a lot of moments where Jimmy Crute just had his hands down, throwing wildly, throwing that front kick up towards Alonzo Menafield, or body kicks way too close for Alonzo Menafield to catch him with a hook. And then you had moments where Alonzo Menafield had Jimmy Crute wobbled really badly and didn't find a way to finish the fight. Jimmy Crute is tough, and Jimmy Crute doing his thing on with the grappling. But Alonzo Menafield, great at scrambling, creating a little bit of distance and popping his hips up and standing back up. I think Alonzo Menafield is going to come away with the win this time. I think just based on the damage that he did against Jimmy Crute the last time around, Jimmy Crute having his hands down for a big chunk of the fight, I think Alonzo Menafield is going to land some damaging punches once again. And instead of, just being dumb about it, I think he's actually going to try and close the distance, finish, maybe take Jimmy Crute down, ground and pound him out. It really depends on if he's patient, the way that we were just talking about Michael Morales, when he lands one of those damaging punches, don't do dumb stuff, but I think Alonzo Menafield will walk away with the win this time. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. This is a really interesting fight, especially with the added layer that we've already seen it once before. And Alonzo Menafield did win that one if you don't take away that point. So, Jimmy Crute is going to land basically like what you said. Is Jimmy Crute going to be able to get Alonzo Menafield to the ground, and is he going to be able to keep him there? That's the main thing. Jimmy Crute, I think he averages something like 4 or 5 takedowns per round. But that, that was something I heard, somebody mentioned that, it begs the question, if you're taking somebody down 5 times, that means they're getting up 4. So, that calls into question your ability to control someone and maintain top position once you take them down. And sure, those takedowns could potentially win you a round in a close round. But if there's a big gap in the striking and you're getting pieced on the feet, you get a takedown, the guy gets back up and then is able to land you with a shot. Well, a lot of times judges will grade that damage more than the takedown, considering the guy was able to get up. So it makes it really concerning for Jimmy Crute and his, skill set. So I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Alonzo Menafield because he won it once before. He's shown that he has really good takedown defense. I think it's sitting at 75% for his career inside of the UFC, which is against some solid competition. And he's shown, an ability to stay on his feet when he has a standing advantage, especially against an opponent who's mainly a grappler. So I think Alonzo Menafield is going to take it again, but it wouldn't surprise me if Jimmy Crute wins, only because he is the younger fighter. He saw this fight once before, and if he can change his game plan, he can get those takedowns, and maybe he's been working on his top control, and he can keep Alonzo Menafield on the ground if he does get him there and win some rounds that way. I couldn't put it past him. He's the more likely to improve at this stage in his career. So an interesting fight for sure.
That's a really good point. That's that he's more likely to improve being younger. I got to see how intelligent he is on Saturday, and if he actually tries to block things instead of headbutting people's fists the Mike Perry way. One other fight I want to talk about. It's I guess it's the main event for the prelims. The departure, the final fight, the penultimate moment for Robbie Lawler coming up against Nico Price. Robbie Lawler is not the Robbie Lawler of old. We all know that. He is a plus 210 dog coming in against Niko Price. But I do think that this is actually a very winnable fight for Robbie Lawler. We have seen him, be a little chinny, against guys like Brian Barberena who get in there and, just throw wild punches. I don't think Niko Price is that guy to, just get a little wild with Robbie Lawler in here. I think it's more likely Niko Price wins, especially considering like the trend is for guys, in their last fight to actually lose. When it's pre-announced that it's going to be the retirement match. But being that Robbie Lawler is who he is, he's got such a rich history in the UFC, and he's got some great fights. I'd be willing to stake like a half a unit on Robbie Lawler at plus 210, because he still has his hands. It's really like the one thing about Robbie Lawler that hasn't gone away. Outside of his toughness too, he's tough, and he's still got cinder blocks for hands. He still lands a lot of heavy damaging shots. So, while I think it's more likely that Niko Price is going to win this one, I am going to be betting on Robbie Lawler, and I'll actually take him as my prelim notable pick here as well. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, that's a tough one to agree with you on. Just after the performances that we've seen from Robbie Lawler, I mean, Niko Price is still in there, and he got the loss against Phil Rowe 6 months ago, where I think if I remember correctly, he was not like when it says KO TKO, it was more of a TKO where he was still in there ready to fight, and the ref stepped in. So it's really hard to put Niko Price away, even though he has a lot of losses on his record. I think Niko Price he uses his length well when he goes out and has his best performances. That's to say that a lot of times he doesn't go out there and have his best performances. He's very up and down. When he's good, he's really good. When he's bad, he just seems to leave himself open and get hit. He's really a younger version of Robbie Lawler in a lot of ways that, he doesn't have the put away one punch power that Robbie Lawler had at one time. But he is, ruthless in a similar way that he is going to keep coming at you. He fires a lot of things from a lot of different angles. He's a fun fighter, fights for the fans. And no matter what happens, win, lose, or tie, it's going to be a fun performance from Niko Price, even if he's not at his best. But against a 41-year-old Robbie Lawler, he knows that he's coming into the fight, knowing that it's his last fight. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to see. Basically, his only win in his last 4 is against Nick Diaz, and Nick Diaz didn't really show up to fight anyway. So he's kind of like, 0-4 over his last 5. And I just don't think someone 33 years old who still has speed and accuracy and precision still wants to go out there and put fun fights on, and most importantly, has a career ahead of him that he's looking to make, as successful as possible, versus Robbie Lawler, who's getting in there and maybe it's nostalgic to be in a training camp one last time. I don't think there's going to be the same vigor to go out there and get the win. Because there's just less road in front of him at this point. So I think, his speed is not there anymore. His ability to take a shot is not there. I'm not sure if we'll see either of these guys be finished, just because they are both so strong and durable. But I think it's going to be a great fight, but I think we're going to see Niko Price landing more volume and the more impactful shots.
Well, like I said, Robbie Lawler could get it done. The plus 210 money, I love it. It's just fun. Like if he gets the win and I win that bet, then, it's a fun night for me and Robbie Lawler. But I'm good on the prelim notables. What do you think, Tom? You got any more for us? You want to move on to the main?
I'm ready to get to this awesome main card.
Let's do it. All right, opening up the main card. Good friend, training partner of the man who this card was built around, as John Anik likes to say. But Dan Hooker coming in here against Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner coming off a loss against Mateusz Gamrot, but he has been, just working his way up through this lightweight division so far. 4-1 over his last 5. His last victory coming over Brad Riddell, another Aussie. He keeps going up against these Australian guys, right? Because before the Brad Riddell fight, he had a knockout over Jamie Malaki. So he's coming up against another Australian, New Zealander, that regional world. And Dan Hooker this week. Dan Hooker, an all-time fan favorite. Don't really think he's been the same since he fought Dustin Poirier a couple of years ago. I think Jalen Turner is going to find a way to pull this one off, right? Like we're starting to see a Dan Hooker that potentially could be like in those twilight years of his career now. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much of a title aspiration for Dan Hooker. You see him jumping around divisions, going down to fight Arnold Allen last year, down to 145. It's just not the same Dan Hooker, right? Like there was a time when he was in that upper echelon of lightweights, and for a little bit there, he wasn't even a lightweight anymore. But I think Jalen Turner, much brighter future in the UFC. They both have a very long reach, but I think that Jalen Turner is a little bit better at using it. Dan Hooker likes to close the distance, get in your face, and throw wild hooks, and just land a lot of damage. He is still tough. You got to give him that. Dan Hooker is still one of the toughest sons of guns in the UFC. So I don't think he's going to be finished this week, but I do think that this is going to be a fight where Jalen Turner sits back on that reach a little bit, counters a lot. Dan Hooker being wild but being strong, landing maybe more damage, but Jalen Turner landing more strikes and more significant strikes. So I'm going to go with Jalen Turner this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, you summarized it up well. Jalen Turner is a guy. It says they both have 75.5-inch reaches here. I don't think that that's accurate. I think Jalen Turner is closer to 77 or 78. So he's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage. But he, like you said, he uses his reach really well. He lands jabs. He stays long. He also has a giant leg reach as well that he uses to keep, stabbing out there and maintain distance and only allow people to get as far as he allows them to get. Now, again, that plays a little bit to the Hangman Hooker style, where he's going to want to get in on the inside. So if he can get past those teeping legs and those jabs, he's able to get in the inside. He can land those hooks. The thing is that both of these guys have really good chins. I think Jalen Turner has much more power at this point in his career, and he's shown a really good takedown defense. Not that Dan's going to be looking. Actually, you know what? Hooker might look to take him down, because he may realize that, hey, listen, in the turn of a standing battle here, I'm at a reach disadvantage for 155 pounds. The guy is 6'3", which is, insanely big. So it's really hard to fight that way. So Dan may look to take him down because potentially he thinks he has an advantage there. I think he's been in some fights where he's been on the ground before. I think that the Nasrat Hakparas fight, he showed that, he can wrestle if he has to. But I think no matter what, I think Jalen Turner is going to be able to ward that off. I think he's going to keep the fight standing. I think he's going to use his length and reach. He's going to land the more damaging shots. I think he might even land he may not land more volume, but I trust that he's going to have a really strong jab. He's going to have a really strong leg kicks here, and really work Dan Hooker, try and slow him down, keep him a little bit more stagnant. And then, once he has him moving less, I think he's going to go in there with a kill shot. And I think, unfortunately, Dan Hooker might get finished here. Jalen Turner looked, even in the fight with Mateusz Gamrot, he was fighting off Mateusz Gamrot takedown the whole time. Mateusz was able to get him down, I think, a couple of times. But, again, it was a split decision. It was a really close fight. And how highly people hold Mateusz Gamrot. He's, working his way to be in the top of the division talent-wise. So I think Jalen Turner is right up there, and I just don't think Dan Hooker is a top 5 guy in the 155-pound division anymore. So for all those reasons, I think Jalen Turner is going to get this one done.
Yeah, I agree. It's sad because, like, Dan Hooker, he hasn't been the same since he fought Poirier. Yeah, he is fun, but, that Poirier fight took so much out of him.
Right.
I think like in the lifetime health bar, like he lost a lot of health points there, but it is a fight. Like it is potentially winnable for Dan Hooker, and the line isn't too crazy. So if you're a big Dan Hooker fan, like I might throw a little bit on Dan Hooker, but my main bet in this fight is Jalen Turner. But maybe stake a little bit on Hooker just for the fun of it. But Jalen.
I mean, we've been seeing a lot of upsets lately. You know what I mean?
Past 2 weeks, crazy.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. Especially, I mean, not that it applies here, but especially the undefeated fighters have been most at risk. The ones that come in that look well-rounded. I'm looking at Ismail Bonfim last week, most notably. So a lot of guys are getting getting upset. So it wouldn't be the craziest thing. I mean, Dan Hooker's got a ton of UFC experience. His losses, I mean, are to Michael Chandler, which, he just got caught with a left hook, which he occasionally does, Dan Hooker. He lost to Islam Makhachev and Arnold Allen at 135 pounds. and he looked good against Claudio Puelles, even though Puelles was on the ground the whole time. So it wouldn't be the most shocking thing. He's only 33 years old, so it's not like it's at the end of his career. So it wouldn't be the most shocking thing if Dan Hooker goes in there and gets the upset. I mean, it's Dan Hooker, man. He's fun, and people watch him for a reason. But it just seems like with the reach and the size of Jalen Turner and the role he's been on lately, it doesn't seem likely.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. All right, you want to move on to the next one? We got Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. This site cannot be reached. Oh, nice. All right.
Scared me for a second.
Yeah, this is a wild fight because of the implication. If you're an Always Sunny fan,
I was just gonna say, no, it's the implication.
Yeah, no, but totally different implication around this fight. Title shot implications. Robert Whittaker obviously has fought and lost to Izzy twice. DDP, Diamond Dallas Page. He hasn't fought Izzy, but has definitely garnered his attention by saying that he's the only true African in the UFC, or one of the true Africans, and Izzy is not.
I don't think what he said wasn't even that outrageous. He said something for the line of like, yeah, I want to bring a championship back to Africa because I'm the only one who trains in Africa, or something like innocuous like that. It wasn't like aggressive. It's just the media took it as he's been. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, but I mean, it certainly worked though, because he's been built up now to where if he beats Robert Whittaker this week, then he's fighting for the title shot. Like Izzy clearly wants to fight him. Like he's basically the only guy that he's been talking about in the division now that Alex is gone. Mm-hmm. Because like he doesn't want to fight Robert Whittaker again. It's not going to do the numbers. It's just like the du Plessis fight. If that happens, it's going to sell pay-per-views because of the beef. It's already built up basically. So I think for the storyline, du Plessis needs to win. Robert Whittaker is the better all-around fighter. He's the better grappler. He's got the better gas tank. He's more intelligent on his feet. But du Plessis does present like interesting challenges. He's strong. He's got extreme power behind his punches. He fought at KSW beforehand, where he was one of the few guys not roided to the gills. At least when he came to the UFC, he tested clean. I don't know if he was on roids there. That is a notorious promotion for guys on steroids, though. And that's where du Plessis got his professional start. But, so he could definitely eat a punch. And we've seen him eat punches from hard hitters like the Brad Tavares of the world. That was a crazy fight. And I think just Robert Whittaker is going to go in there and do his thing and probably get the W. For the storyline, du Plessis needs to win at plus, what is he? He's plus 300. Plus 300. At plus 300, I'm going to bet him because I'm a du Plessis fan. And I think that he has the ability to surprise a lot of people. That Derek Brunson fight, obviously that was like a really like half. That was a half of Derek Brunson. But he went out there and surprised a lot of people. I do think he has the ability to surprise people because he throws it all out there on the line. And even though he looks like his cardio is shot, when he starts breathing deep, it looks like he throws faster and harder, which is surprising to a lot of people. With all that being said, there's just something telling me that du Plessis is going to win this week. I think he has to. I think if the universe makes any sense, du Plessis wins here. And maybe you have a du Plessis Strickland fight, or du Plessis goes right up to fight Adesanya. But I'm going to go with du Plessis at plus 300. The money line is too sweet to pass that up. What do you think, Tom?
I just don't see a path to victory for Dricus du Plessis. I don't think he's going to finish Robert Whittaker. And I mean, I'd be interested in seeing someone's argument for the fact that he would, because that'd probably be his only way. Like, do we think that Dricus du Plessis is going to outpoint Robert Whittaker over 3 rounds? I don't think so.
I think he could win 1 round, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So if you think Dricus du Plessis is going to win, you're basically taking him to knock out Robert Whittaker, right? Because you're not taking him.
Yeah, like I said, I'm taking him more for the line than anything.
I'm with you on that. I mean, here's the potential situation that I could maybe see that would result with Dricus du Plessis winning. And that's that, he goes out there, he wins the first round just because of volume, and he goes out there crazy how he does. Remember, he got that nose surgery now, so he's going to be able to breathe more. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of Dricus du Plessis looks like when he can breathe out of his nose. So then the second round, maybe it's a really close round back and forth. They may land good shots either way. And then Robert Whittaker clearly wins the third round. And then with judging the way it's been, it's entirely possible that 2 out of 3 go to Dricus because, maybe or maybe not, the UFC goes, hey, if Robert Whittaker wins, he's just taking out another, prospect. Whereas if Dricus wins, now there's hype around him. He can go fight Izzy, and there's actually claim to reason as to why he should fight Izzy because he beat Whittaker, and Whittaker, it's given Izzy some of his most difficult fights. So I think that is probably the most likely situation. But even there, it's like I think in no world are we going to see Dricus du Plessis go out and outclass Robert Whittaker. And I still think Robert Whittaker is probably the second best fighter, maybe even the first best fighter at middleweight. So for those reasons, I still think Robert Whittaker goes out there and gets it done. Shy of this being a semi-robbery, I think Robert Whittaker is going to be more technical. He's the higher IQ fighter. He has just as good a stamina as anyone could have. He has great wrestling. He's just so well-rounded that I think he beats Dricus du Plessis in pretty much every area other than maybe activity. But necessarily activity without damage doesn't net you anything. And Robert Whittaker is by far the best competition that Dricus du Plessis has seen. I mean, his last 2 fights are Derek Brunson, who was a shell of himself, Darren Till, who is not the best Darren Till that we've ever seen. And even in that fight, Darren Till had some positives. So, and then you have Brad Tavares, where he looked good there. But Brad Tavares is extremely streaky and be inside the UFC for a long time, and has a lot of damage on him. So, and then we're going Trevin Giles, Marcus Perez. Dricus du Plessis has not faced that even close to the caliber of opponent of Robert Whittaker. And Robert Whittaker, to face someone like Dricus, saying, yeah, he goes out there and he throws a lot. I'm sure that's true, but I just don't think that is going to be as much of an adjustment as Dricus is going to have to adjust to the talent level and the competition level of Robert Whittaker. So for that reason, I think Robert Whittaker is a safe bet this week.
Yeah. I think the only place that really DDP, and it's not even tangible really, it's one of those intangibles in sports, is just toughness. Robert Whittaker is tough, but du Plessis, you see him eat shots and basically bleeding out of his eyeball and keep walking forward and throwing the way that he does. There's no recovery time for the guy whatsoever. So,
listen, I could see, I think Robert. I don't know if I see Robert Whittaker finishing Dricus. So I think going over 2.5 rounds is probably a good bet here. Robert Whittaker by decision, I like a lot.
Yeah. But plus 300, to go out there and surprise people, I think it's very doable. I think it's maybe a decision victory.
Well, if you could take Dricus plus 3.5 points, like we were saying. That would definitely have made up for it. You know what I mean? He'd only have to win 1 round and you win your bet, which, I think that's very possible. I very possibly wins a round.
It's a good point. Yeah, you got to use DraftKings for that. But that's.
Have you seen that? Have you been able to make that bet?
Yes, I've seen it on DraftKings.
That's cool.
This is probably the first time I'll make it. So looking forward to that. I'll get to try something new. But all right, next up, we got Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore. Do we really need to talk about this one? You've got 4-0, Bo Nickal, minus 1,200, huge, heavy favorite against Tresean Gore.
It's a travesty that he is ahead of Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, but the UFC is trying to build this guy up. So, yeah, it's true. Especially because of the implication, the du Plessis Whittaker fight should be maybe the co-main event. Actually, you have another title fight. So, yeah, I get what you're saying, though. But they do really want to build up Bo Nickal. And I think with the way that he's been finishing fights, it could be an exciting segue into what may be a 5-round fight in the co-main event. It could be exciting to have a quick finish, which I think it's going to be for Bo Nickal. I think he's going to go out there, throw a high kick that he slips and falls with, like he usually does to open fights. And then after that, he's going to pick whether or not he wants to punch Tresean Gore to death or wrestle him until he suffocates. So Bo Nickal all the way. He's going to choose what he wants to do to Tresean Gore this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, it's interesting. Both of these guys, I mean, first of all, how does he's 4-0, but how does he have 5 fights on the way, on here? We have a 4-0 guy against a guy with 6 fights. You want to talk about them absolutely giving an easy ride to somebody who they have high potential for, in Bo Nickal. This almost like a move that you see in boxing, right? Where but at least I guess to Bo Nickal and the UFC's credit, it's not like Tresean Gore is completely inept. He has gotten some wins. He was, had 2 fights, where he lost to Brian Battle and Cody Brundage, and he didn't look great. The thing is, when he's lost, it's been because he's been out grappled. And Tresean Gore is solid in the clinch, but he's a guy who's going to want to come in. He's stand and bang with you. He's going to want to throw heavy shots, and he's going to want to put you away. His last win over Josh Fremd via submission in the guillotine choke, that was a real surprise, and that was not something that people expected from Tresean Gore. That being said, I think Bo Nickal, exactly what he's going to do and what he's going to go in there and what his game plan is. I think he could try and stand and bang with Tresean Gore, but I don't think there's a reason for him to. Go in there, get your takedown, get it out of there inside of 1 minute. You can submit him or you TKO him from ground position. I don't think Bo Nickal's going to have really much pushback when it comes to getting Tresean Gore on the ground. And I guess we've seen Bo Nickal go out there and get the TKO before. I think it was against John Nolan. We haven't seen him really go out there. I think he did drop somebody. I forget who it was exactly. But I think he did drop somebody. But again, it's the same way Khabib would drop people. It's because they're just so preoccupied trying to defend the takedown that they get caught with their hands low. And I don't think that that's impossible here, but I don't think we're going to get like a one-punch knockout walk-off KO from Bo Nickal.
No shot. I think it's more likely to be a submission than anything. I'm sure that line will be like minus 600 for a Bo Nickal submission. Mm-hmm. I have seen in some states you're able to bet like on FanDuel based on what minute of the fight somebody is going to win. I don't know if you could take that a step further and be like by submission in the first round. In the first minute. Or because I feel like by submission in the 3rd minute would be a very valuable bet. But again, I'm located in a state where that is not allowed. But hopefully soon, because I feel like that would be a very high value bet here. I think it's going to be by submission. Sick parlay leg. He could get it done with some ground and pound too. So Bo Nickal by finish in the first round. You want to talk about the co-main event now?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Bo Nickal, and I don't know how right this is, but Best Fight Odds had minus 118. I guess it's not real. I was going to say minus 118 for Bo Nickal to win by submission in the first round.
No shot.
Yeah, no way that's real.
Yeah, no. Damn. All right, main event. We got a five-round fight for the UFC Flyweight Championship. Brandon Moreno, the assassin baby. When is he going to change that? Versus Alexandre Pantoja. But big fight. I think Brandon Moreno is going to win because we did talk about it before. There's that rub. And, you want to talk about the rub. It's you have 2 of the best flyweights in the world going back and forth for, 4 fights plus a fight against Yair France in between, where he got to test his stand-up against one of the best kickboxers in the division. Brandon Moreno is so creative on his feet. There's a lot of crazy spinning attacks every now and then that he sneaks in there. Like he's got that famous spinning leg kick that he threw against Davis and Figueiredo. Wild, fun to watch. His body kicks, like he finished Yair France with a body kick, super strong. You hear them in a crowded arena. You hear the thud off of somebody's gut and their rib cage. And his hands are so strong too. Not to mention the fact that he came up as a wrestler. That's what he's really known for. Best all-around fighter, one of the best all-around fighters in the UFC at the moment, but I think the best all-around fighter in the flyweight division. While it's fun to have new blood in there with Pantoja, and Pantoja is very well-rounded as himself and has some great wins, I just don't think that he has the skill set to get past Brandon Moreno. It's the year of the Mexican champ. I think Brandon Moreno is going to keep it rolling. He's so much better in not so much better because Pantoja, he's really well-rounded, really good too, but he is a step above Pantoja in a lot of areas, particularly the wrestling and the hands. So I'm going with Brandon Moreno here. Who do you got?
Yeah, this is a tight one. And, it's another one that we've seen before. Pantoja was the winner in that one. And the way that Pantoja has been able to be beaten in his career has usually been through strong grappling and wrestling. Now he's got strong BJJ. He's got really fun kicks. He's very, very quick, and I think that's his advantage over Brandon Moreno is his speed and his power. And I think he's again going to have a stand-up advantage. For everything that Brandon Moreno that you stated he's good at with his leg kicks and his power and being able to get it up there, and certainly that's more improved than what it was when these guys fought the first time. I think you're still going to see striking advantage Alexandre Pantoja. When it comes to the ground, I think that's where Brandon Moreno, now he was able to take guys down and control guys like, Davis and Figueiredo. And, he's shown that he has really strong grappling and wrestling. And I think that is probably going to be his key to winning against Pantoja, because if this fight does hit the ground, that's where Brandon Moreno is going to have to take it out. We've seen him be able to thwart really good jiu-jitsu in the past. We've seen him be able to make people fight his fight. And that's his biggest advantage and his biggest skill is no matter what you're good at, you end up fighting Brandon Moreno the way he wants to fight you. And in a lot of ways, I think we could see Brandon Moreno thwart a couple of takedowns from Pantoja if that's where it goes. And then, he's a boxer by trade. He has the good leg kicks that he put away Kai Kara France with, but he's got that shelled stance, right? He wants to come out and he wants to throw. He has a traditional, what you would call maybe a Mexican style where he wants to really bang with you. He'll wrestle you and he'll grapple you if he has to, if that's what he needs to do to win a round or win a fight. But push comes to shove. If Brandon Moreno wants to fight and he wants to win and he wants to do it his way, he's going to want to stand and he's going to outbox you. And I think that may be a potential downfall for him here. But as the champion, as the younger guy who's been more improved since they fought last, he's going to be the longer guy here. He's a little bit of a bigger frame, and he's got that grappling. I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno. I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, all right, good pick. I like it a lot. Minus 250. I think it's a justified line for Vegas.
I have it as 205.
Well, even better, because I'm betting Brandon Moreno this week. I think it's a solid straight bet, and I think Brandon Moreno maybe by decision is a really valuable bet here this week. I don't know. What do you think? How do you think he's going to get it done?
Yeah, see, so I think Pantoja probably takes the first round because he comes out faster and more aggressive, lands some more, exciting things. I think maybe at the end of the round is when Moreno comes on and makes it even, but people are going to give it to Pantoja. I think the second round is going to maybe also go to Pantoja, but it's going to be a lot closer. That's going to be a little bit back and forth. That's where we see maybe our first takedown by Pantoja on Moreno. Moreno defends it and then lands some good strikes on the ground, and they both get back to the feet. And then for that reason, maybe Moreno takes it, but there's some better striking being landed on the feet by Pantoja, so it's up and back and forth there. And I think as the fight goes on, I think it's going to sway a little bit more towards Moreno. He's got the 5-round experience. He's got the better grappling, which we talk about being a strong base for MMA. And he's got really good stamina. Like I said, he's got the intelligence to go 5 rounds, but also the stamina to back it up. So I think as the fight goes on, I think he's going to be more and more the victor. So I think he's probably going to win maybe the 2nd, the 4th, and the 5th round, or maybe the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 5th, something like that.
Yeah, I like it. So by decision, that's what we like.
Yeah.
All righty. Main event time. Why don't you kick us off with this one?
Ooh, this is going to be a really good one. Very similar to the fight that we talked about before with, a challenger who's really exciting, really well-rounded. Yair Rodriguez is a guy who's got really, really strong jiu-jitsu. He's able to throw up submissions from the bottom, from the top. He's flashy submissions. So, we talk about some guys, they have more orthodox submissions where they're going for arm bars and rear naked chokes and more of your traditional jiu-jitsu submissions. Yair Rodriguez will go through things like omoplatas and potentially even gogoplatas. He'll go after your legs. He just throws things up. He's pretty flashy, and his striking style resembles that as well. He's flashy when he strikes. He throws spinning things. He throws a lot of head kicks. He throws body kicks. He likes to jump a lot. Yair Rodriguez is throwing from a lot of different angles, and that's what makes him so challenging. is that if you want to stand and bang with him, well, guess what? He's going to have this really intimidating style that's throwing things from all over. He's got really good stamina, and he's really hard to deal with because he's so unpredictable, and he's throwing things with considerable power behind them as well. And then if you end up on the ground with him, well, whether you're on top or you're on bottom, he's going to be able to throw up a submission, and he's always working for a finish. He doesn't just sit on bottom or accept positions. He's always active, and he really pushes a pace, whether it's on the ground or on the feet. Now, that would typically be a problem for basically anyone who's not named Alexandre Volkanovski, because it seems like in a lot of different ways, Volk has faced each aspect of Yair's game and been able to pass it with flying colors. In terms of the aggressive submissions that we talked about from top or bottom, listen, he's fought Brian Ortega. And when you're talking about elite MMA level jiu-jitsu practitioners, you're talking about Yair Rodriguez and you're talking about Brian Ortega. So if he's able to get out of those positions with Brian Ortega, I would give Volk every opportunity or every instance, every benefit of the doubt to get out of those from Yair Rodriguez as well. And then when it comes to stand up and flashy striking, I mean, Volk has been in there 3 times with Max Holloway. Granted, Max Holloway is not a flashy striker, but he is probably the best striker. So if he can do that, I would say that Yair Rodriguez, as unpredictable as he is, I think that's still a step down in level of competition. It's going to be a really interesting fight. Yair's 30 years old, so he's the younger guy. He's going to be the bigger guy, of course. No shock there in an Alex Volkanovski fight. But I'm going to have to go with Volk. I think the grappling is going to be a strength, where he's been able to be in there with Brian Ortega and people who are dangerous finishers. And he's passed that with flying colors even when he gets into a bad position. So I have to give Volk the benefit of the doubt to be able to thwart submission attempts. And then when it comes to striking, I mean, that's his bread and butter. He's in there, and it doesn't matter what you're going to throw at him. He's really fast. And what is maybe his biggest strength is his reflexes, and that he's able to just get out of there. He doesn't waste a lot of movements, so he's able to stay in the fight and with good stamina and good intelligence throughout the length of the fight, because he doesn't overexhaust himself. He turns it on when he needs to. And, like I said, he's able to get out of the way but not move his head too far to where now he's overextenuating these movements and wasting energy. He's really good at conserving energy, and his reflexes are great. So I think that's going to give him everything that he needs in order to get out of the way from some bigger shots by Yair. That's not to say that Yair won't land anything. I think it's a really strong chance that he lands a couple of things, maybe even hurts Volk. I mean, we've seen Volk get hit, drop to a knee, and stand right back up before. This guy has one of the best chins that we've seen, and it just happens to be on a great, well-rounded fighter. So I think that's the long-winded way of saying Alexandre Volkanovski is going to have the skills yet again to thwart any potential oncoming offense from Yair Rodriguez. I hope I left you something to say.
No, nothing at all. I don't know what else there is to say outside of the fact that you have to touch on, the Mexican champion stuff. That is very big, because we have seen this in the UFC where it's the African champs, the Mexican champs. I could see, like how you mentioned with Plessis, a funny decision coming out at the end of this, because Yair Rodriguez is no chump. And I don't think it's going to be as lopsided on the feet in the way that the Brian Ortega fight was. And it's certainly not going to be as lopsided as the fights that he's had when it comes to grappling with Max Holloway, where he's that much better than Max. Yair Rodriguez is very well-rounded as well. But, I think this is going to be another stepping stone just for Volkanovski to cement his legacy, because that's what we're coming down to now. It's maybe this fight, maybe an Ilia Topuria fight, and then maybe another lightweight shot. Who knows the order of that. But I just think another stepping stone. Volk looks unbeatable at this point. And I don't think, like we've had champs that look like they're, untouchable, like Amanda Nunes in the past. But I think Volkanovski is intelligent enough where he's not, if he has a bad camp or he gets hurt, he's not going to take the fight, or he's going to pull out maybe. But even then, does the guy have a bad camp? He trains with some of the best fighters in the world at one of the best gyms in the world. And, he doesn't really suffer a lot of injury or takes care of himself very well, at least. So, as long as he comes into this fight 100% healthy and 100% Volk, then it's going to be a victory for him. And I can't wait to wear my Alex Volkanovski shirt on Saturday and scream at my television for a half an hour while these two guys go at it, because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be having people over at my house, and then I'm going to scare people away when Volk starts fighting. But super pumped for this, and I don't know how you could bet against Volk. I think Volk by decision. would be incredible. And I think the only thing that would just further Volk's legacy is if he started finishing guys. He doesn't really need to, nor would it be intelligent for him to go into a fight looking for the finish, because he does fight the most dangerous men in the world. But yeah, outside of that, I think it's going to be a resounding decision victory for Volk, maybe a 4-1 or a 3-2. But super excited for this one. I can't wait. I cannot wait to see our boy go at it again. So yeah, I'm going with Volk this week. You want to hit our pick rundown and wrap this thing up?
Let's put a bow in it.
All right, prelim locks. Or notables. I'm going with Alonzo Menafield over Jimmy. That's like an absolute barn burner. Is that Chance going at it? What are you doing back there, Chance? And then I'm going with Robbie Lawler over Nico Price. Robbie Lawler more likely to lose this one, I think. Willing to lay a couple units on it, though, just because of the line and who he is. And if Robbie Lawler comes out with a victory, then it'll be a big party going into the main card for a lot of people. Main card, I'm going with Jalen Turner over Dan Hooker, even though that makes me sad. I'm going with Dricus du Plessis over Robert Whittaker, mainly for that plus 300 line and DDP's ability to surprise people. He's been surprising a lot of his recent opponents. Bo Nickal, obviously, against Tresean Gore. Bo Nickal by submission, most likely. Brandon Moreno over Alexandre Pantoja, going with Moreno by decision. And I think Volk is going to have a resounding decision victory over Yair Rodriguez. What do you got, Tom?
All right. For the prelim notables, I'm going to go with, you know what? I am going to go with Tyra. I think the ground game is going to do it. So I'm going to go, we didn't talk about that much, but I'm going to go with Tatsuro Tyra. I'm going to go with Alonzo Menafield to get it done over Jimmy Crute, but that's going to be tight. And I think the Yasmin Yarguay and Denise Gomez fight, I think we can take that one going to decision. And I'm also going to go with, I'm going to go with Nico Price getting it done over Robbie Lawler. I don't know if I feel a decision or a finish there, but I think Nico Price is going to get it done. And I think, what did we say was the line? Minus 260. I don't know. I don't love that bet either, but I do think he's going to get it done. It just seems more like a pick'em fight. Onto the main card. I'm going with Jalen Turner. I feel confident in that one. I feel confident in the Robert Whittaker fight, to be honest, but I think that one going to decision is probably a good bet. Taking the over 2.5, or if they're offering you spreads, I think maybe Dricus plus 3.5. If they'll give you that, that's probably a pretty good spread there. I would also take Nico Price plus 3.5, or if they lets you manipulate that. There's probably a good spread in there that you can get for Nico Price considering that situation. Bo Nickal first round finish is what I would lay there. I think Brandon Moreno is going to be a little bit more well-rounded. He's going to have the stronger grappling, and then later on in the fight, he's going to have some more striking advantage. I'm going with Brandon Moreno to get it done by decision there. And I think Volk is going to get it done by decision over Yair Rodriguez. I think Yair is going to look good. I think Yair is even going to have some success late in the fight, but overall, you're going to have Volkanovski winning the majority of the rounds and the majority of the minutes, most importantly. So go with Volk by decision as well.
All right. Sounds good. We got a lot of super locks on there. Let's just remind everybody at home, please like, comment, subscribe. If you were with us today and you didn't leave a comment, I'm mad at you. I wanted to talk to you and interact. But you can check us out on Spotify. If you couldn't listen to this whole or watch this whole episode on YouTube, you could listen on Spotify. And then follow us on Twitter. I'm at Pickin' Keith. Tom is at Pickin' Fights Tom. And then you can check us out at _Pickin' Winners. All right. Thanks, Tom, for being here. Thanks, everybody that joined us this Sunday. It was a fun episode. Really looking forward to this card coming up. Might live stream during the card or do like a Twitter Spaces or something, especially during the main event. Yeah, yeah, we have a lot of fun with that. We'll invite our friends from Men of Order, like Cassius Cam over there and Joe. Anyways, yeah, well, we'll enjoy this, and then we'll see you back next Sunday. Bye.
Take it easy.